So I got the Platinum Trophy for Days Gone, and I've done everything in the game that you could possibly do, and I want to take some time to give my final thoughts on this game. I know a lot of you have been patiently waiting for this, and I greatly appreciate it. You guys know I like to take my time with games, and when I'm ready to give my final thoughts on a game, it's usually because I feel as though I've done pretty much every possible thing I could do. I usually don't feel comfortable giving my final thoughts on any game if I feel that I just haven't had enough time with it or I haven't seen everything it has to offer. So now that I've done everything in Days Gone, we're going to be going over a lot of the things I really liked and enjoyed and even loved about this game. A few things I didn't like and the potential for a sequel. And we're going to be diving a little bit more into why I think that the critics were they just got this game so wrong, honestly. And obviously there's going to be major spoilers within this, review. So if you're somebody who doesn't want it spoiled, definitely don't watch any more of this video. I'm even going to be talking about the secret endings that you can get in the game, which was also a cool surprise. But yeah, diving right into it, I want to start with the story. Now, I think the story was actually probably the strongest aspect of the game, if I'm being honest. I think the characters were great. I think the world building was done really well. And I found myself, while playing Days Gone, always wanting to kind of just figure out what's going to happen next. Where's this all leading to? What is the big conclusion here? And there were definitely some twists along the way. There was nothing that was extremely surprising except for the secret ending. Now, the secret ending definitely sets up a potential sequel for this game, and it's really interesting, actually. When you are playing Days Gone, you're kind of following Nero, right? And Nero is the government agency that clearly knows a lot more about what's going on than you do, and while you're following them and essentially stalking them, you're gaining bits of information throughout the game as you're doing these stealth missions, which I did enjoy these missions. You're not allowed to fight or engage in combat within these missions, or you will automatically fail it, which adds a different element, and I could appreciate it. They're trying to, change it up a little bit, where you can't just approach a mission by, killing everything in your way. You actually have to sneak around and utilize stealth, which it does fine. And I enjoyed those missions. And while you're following Nero, you're learning more about the virus. You're learning more about what happened and what's happening to the freaks and how they're mutating. And there's different variants of them and different versions. And it all kind of builds up to the secret ending to essentially let you know that, hey, this is more serious than you could have thought, and it's mutating at a crazy rate. And I was trying to figure out, because I couldn't remember, honestly, if they explicitly explained in this game how everybody got infected. I'm about 99% sure, though, it was airborne, and anybody who's not infected is essentially just immune to it, or they have it in their bloodstream, and it just hasn't taken hold of them the way it does most other people. And with the secret ending, obviously, we find out that O'Brien is infected, but he's still very much intelligent and retains a lot of human qualities, but he clearly has like super strength and all that, and he jumps onto the helicopter kind of showing off what he's capable of doing, and it just kind of catches you completely off guard, like, wow, that was unexpected. And he says that they're coming for you, or they're coming for us, hinting that Nero is definitely the bad guy in all of this. And there's just a lot of implications with the ending, and it was just kind of a lot to wrap my head around, because during the story, you or the majority of the story, I should say, you're really kind of out there looking for your wife, and eventually you do find her, and it was really interesting. I actually appreciate the approach that Ben took with the storytelling here, where it felt a little bit more realistic to me, where when you finally find your wife, it's not actually this type of situation that you would expect, where they're reunited and everything's great and it's happily ever after and all that. It was actually a little bit more realistic, where some of the characters like Ricky and even Boozer were kind of letting you know that, hey, Deacon, even if you find her, you're gonna be, things have changed. It's been a long time. Like, even if she is alive, she could be a different person now, just like you've become somewhat of a different person. And it just adds this interesting element where that's kind of realistic, right? Like, if this was a real situation, people do change, especially in the post-apocalyptic world, right? And so when you finally are reunited with Sarah, it's definitely a big deal, and you could tell they're surprised, especially Sarah, but they don't immediately just kick it off like, oh, like, we just saw each other yesterday. You actually have to, there's sections in the story where you have to kind of rebuild and that relationship, and kind of get comfortable with one another again, and realize that both of you have changed in different ways. And I just really appreciated that aspect, and I feel like in some of the reviews I've listened to, I haven't really heard people go too in depth with the story in that way, and I just really appreciated that. Another thing about the story that I liked was the writing. Actually, I've seen some people say that they don't like the writing. The writing itself isn't perfect. What I mean to say is the voice acting. That's what I'm really talking about here. I think the voice acting in this game is phenomenal. Not necessarily for every little interaction, but the bulk of it feels genuine, and the way the characters talk to each other feels like how real people talk. And I feel like that's such an important thing when you're trying to create a game that's story heavy, that a lot of games just get really wrong, and it just becomes kind of cringe. And in this case, I think Days Gone nailed it, especially Deacon. Deacon's character is a great character, honestly. I think he's one of the better characters I've played in a game in a long time, where of course he has that somewhat stereotypical exterior where he's tough dude who's been out here for a while, surviving, but you can tell there's a lot of heart there. He, as a character, he has a lot of heart, and you see that, and it kind of expands upon that throughout the game, and so do the other characters. And this game, just, you could tell it has a lot of heart behind it, where there's just a lot of passion with everything they tried to do. And getting back to the voice acting, I just think that the interactions between the characters, every time I was listening to it, it was very rare that I felt like I wasn't actually listening in on an actual conversation, and I just really appreciated that, because that's a hard thing to do. Some of the writing at some times was a little bit, off the mark, but there was a lot in this game. There was a lot of story in this game, and so to kind of sum up how I feel about the overall story, because I feel like it's probably the most significant aspect of this game, I thought it was great, and I honestly am just so confused. Again, not to harp on this, but when we look at some of the reviews this game got, especially the reviews that were focusing on the story, making it seem like the story was generic, it was bland, it was this, it was that. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I thought it was great, and I'm honestly really, really hoping now, especially after the secret ending, that we get a sequel to Days Gone, because, man, I really think it deserves it, and I think that this world is actually very interesting. At first, I think a lot of people think it's just another generic survival game, zombies, but it's not really that. When you actually listen to how they talk about the virus and the freakers and the mutations, it's actually pretty interesting, I would say. So, yeah, when it comes to the story, absolutely amazing. Moving on to the actual gameplay, this is where I found that it took me a lot longer than I expected to really feel comfortable with the combat. And I feel like that's an important thing to touch on here, because combat in this game is most of what you're doing, right, when it comes to gameplay. We have the motorcycle, obviously, and the motorcycle was awesome. I think that they did a really good job. It took me a little while to get used to the feel of it, but once you upgrade your motorcycle and you really get it to be much better, I know that there were some people complaining towards the first half of the game how it feels annoying because you constantly have to refuel your motorcycle, and I totally understand that. It did get a little bit annoying, but at the same time, they kind of set it up to where they want you to pay attention to your surroundings as you're driving through the world. There are certain areas, like when you see a tow truck or a gas station, that's kind of a sign like, hey, if you need to refuel, maybe take a second stop, get the can, because they always spawn these gas cans around there to refuel. But they also make it, so that you feel incentivized to want to continue to progress, to upgrade your bike, because eventually you upgrade the gas tank along with everything else, like the tires and all this other stuff within your bike, to just make it better. And when you upgrade your gas tank, you can drive for a very long time before you have to refuel, and you makes fast traveling much easier and less, it doesn't consume nearly as much fuel. So stuff like this, I feel like some people maybe didn't really like it. For me personally, I like the progression within the game, but I'm straying off here from what I originally wanted to talk about, which is the combat. And the combat took me a while to get used to. When I first started playing this game, for like the first, I'd say 20 hours or so, maybe even longer, because I probably put like 80 to 100 hours into this game, which is crazy to me. I was not expecting to do that. I was basically utilizing melee combat for most of my encounters, and it got kind of annoying because I thought, man, like, I thought I'd be doing more shooting in this game. There's a heavy emphasis on guns, and a lot of the enemies have guns, and there's a lot of ranged combat. And I realized it was because of a few things. Well, first of all, the combat in this game, if they do make a sequel, specifically with the gunplay, it needs to be overhauled, because I'd say that that's probably the weakest aspect of this. And I know not everybody will agree, and I have to say that them adding the focus meter does help, but that kind of shows you that if you have to rely on that focus meter to feel as though you can be efficient when shooting enemies, it definitely takes away from it. Now, I don't know. When I think about, completing this game entirely and the amount of hordes I've had to take on, I didn't find an issue there. Like, when it comes to taking on hordes of enemies, of freakers, the shooting was just fine. You get your LMG and you just light them up, and, you run from them, get some distance, turn around, you're firing like crazy. Accuracy doesn't really matter, but I noticed that that's the biggest issue I've had with combat, specifically with firearms, is that when I'm trying to take on enemies from any distance at all, there's just this lack of precision that kind of drove me nuts. But one thing I will say is that the longer you play the game, obviously the more you get used to it, the better you get at it just from playing it, but you do get better weapons, and getting those better weapons does make a significant difference. I did find that for my last 20 to 30 hours in the game, as I got like the more powerful weapons and assault rifles and sniper rifles and even pistols and shotguns, I found it much easier to take on enemies. And again, maybe it's just because I got used to the combat, or maybe that's how they wanted it to be. They wanted you to feel incentivized once again to continue to upgrade, to continue to progress, to continue to get better weapons. But either way, I feel like going in the sequel, that's the area that honestly is going to need the biggest improvement. There's one other area that's going to need a major improvement, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Just to finish up how I feel about the combat, it wasn't the worst I've ever played, and as I played more and more, I started to enjoy it more and more and get used to it more and more. And as I upgraded my character in the game, Deacon St. John, and making him, basically putting all my skill points into all the different branches, it definitely opened it up more and made it easier. But the first 20 to 25 hours were definitely a struggle, and I would say that going into a sequel to this game, one thing Bend Studio will certainly have to do is try to refine that combat and get it to a point where it just doesn't feel as cumbersome or clunky when you're taking on groups of enemies, because there's just so many times where I felt like I'm at a disadvantage because I'm having trouble controlling my character and aiming weapons efficiently, and it would get a little bit frustrating at times. But yeah, I overall enjoyed the combat. Wasn't the worst, but far from the best. It gets the job done, I guess we could say, and as you get further in the game, it definitely improves. The other area of the game that will certainly need some major improvement going into a potential sequel, or even if they want to bring this game to PS5, is the technical side of things. Now, this game obviously launched with a lot of issues. It almost launched broken for some people, but Bend Studio was very quick to patch most of it up. But even then, it took them a little while to really get it to where it needed to be. Now, I have to say, for me personally, just speaking for me, I haven't encountered a single glitch or bug that affected my experience. Now, that's not to say I haven't experienced them, because I certainly have. Some of them are actually pretty comical, but I haven't experienced anything that got in the way of my gameplay experience. The worst thing I'd say I've probably experienced is maybe like when I'm in the middle of combat, kind of getting hung up or stuck on something for a second, or when I'm riding my motorcycle, there's just sudden frame freezes and sudden frame drops that can be extremely irritating, especially the frame freezes. But some people make it sound like this game is completely broken and their experience was just ruined by it. You know what? I can't speak to that. Having an occasional frame drop or frame freeze, yes, it's annoying and it shouldn't be that way, but at the same time, like, I really don't consider that game breaking. It's just like, oh, well, that's annoying, that sucks, but it happens so infrequently that, I mean, how could anybody, I don't know, for me, it just didn't get in the way. That's not to make an excuse for it. Again, I do feel that this is an area where they're going to need to improve big time with a sequel, but looking on the technical side as well, something I do have to give them credit for is what they've been able to achieve with the Freaker Hordes. Now, I have to say, one of the most exhilarating experiences in this game was actually taking on the Hordes. Now, obviously, if you choose to take on every Horde, it can kind of, lose its luster a little bit towards the end, but some of the bigger Hordes, like at the Sawmill and some other areas that I'm forgetting the name, but there's just some Hordes that are so massive, seeing that many enemy, like, I haven't had that type of experience basically since I played Left 4 Dead, for the first time when I was being attacked by hordes of zombies, and it was that similar feeling, and I just thought, like, the first time I took on like a massive horde, it was a intense feeling. Honestly, it was a great gameplay experience. It got my adrenaline flowing, and it kind of just got me on edge, and I was just so focused. I was in the flow, and I have to say, like, that is probably the aspect of this game that sold Sony when Bend was pitching it to them, because it's just so awesome. And I really don't know how anybody who played this game can experience those moments and feel like, oh, it was okay, I guess, or no, it wasn't that great. Because to me, when I got done killing my first major Freaker Horde, I was like, holy crap, this was amazing, and I can't wait to keep doing it. And by the end of it, I did take on every single horde. By maybe like the last 3 hordes, I was like, okay, let's just get this done as quickly and efficiently as possible, because I've killed like thousands upon thousands of freaks at this time. But it was so good, man. Like, that's definitely one of the strongest points of gameplay within this game, and it's just a feeling like no other. And I have to give credit to Ben for being able to achieve that technically, where, I'm turning around, and even though the frame rate does drop a little bit, frankly, when I'm in the middle of that, intense experience, I don't notice it. I mean, I don't know who could notice it. It's not like the frame rate drops like 10 or, frames per second. It's not that serious. Maybe it drops by a few. But, yeah, and just to kind of wrap everything up here, because there's just so much to unpack with a game like Days Gone. Something else I have to say that's very positive about it is the amount of content. Now, it depends on what type of gamer you are. If you're the type of gamer that likes open world games and you like a lot of different things to do, a lot of side activities, when you're done the main, stories or the main quest, you can do side stuff. There's a lot of that here, and I enjoyed most of it. I would say that the most irritating and annoying thing for me, and this is just for me personally because I wanted to get the platinum, was getting the collectibles. But one thing Bend Studio did that I really wish a lot of other studios would do, or just a lot of other developers, is they made it so you can obtain the platinum by getting 75% of all the collectibles, not 100%, which thank God they did that, because even that was kind of a struggle. But if you're just playing the game and exploring, you get a lot of these collectibles on your own anyway. And then if you really want the platinum, you just got to kind of clean it up a little bit and maybe go to some areas and backtrack and whatever, and just do a little bit more detailed exploration, where you're focusing a little bit more. But I'm really glad they did that. Something else they did that I have to point out here is what they did with the PlayStation 4 touchpad. They actually utilized it in a way that I haven't seen before, where if you swipe right or left or up or down, it takes you to different menus, and that's just genius. It's just a great way to actually utilize one of the unique features that the DualShock 4 offers, and I thought it was very cool that they did that. Something else, just again touching up on all the little things here, if I haven't reiterated this or said this already, I will reiterate it, is that I love the progression in the game. I like the skill trees. I like the fact that you can slowly but surely, upgrade Deacon, and when you start out the game compared to where you are when you finish the game, you are so much stronger and you are so much more capable, and I just like the way they kind of trickle that. I love that incentive. It really makes me feel like I am making progress, and it does truly incentivize me to continue to push, to want to, not only continue the story, obviously, because the story alone makes me want to continue, but to actually do side activities, to actually do other things besides just trying to mainline the game, and I really appreciate that. I appreciated a lot about Days Gone, if I'm being honest. And I feel, I don't know exactly what I'm going to title this video, but I think it's going to be something along the lines of Days Gone is actually an amazing game. And I understand that everybody has their own opinions, and I'm not saying everybody needs to love this game, because if it's not your cup of tea, it's just not your cup of tea. But I think the critics got this game so wrong. Not every critic, of course, but, you know, the main ones, right? Like these main websites that, you know, mainstream. I don't understand what game they were playing. I really don't, because even if I wasn't a huge fan of like zombies or post-apocalyptic games, like there's still so much in this game when it comes to the characters, the storytelling, the writing, just the environments, the, you know, the world building that's so good. I really enjoyed my time with Days Gone. I thought it was an amazing game, and you guys know I don't score games. I've seen many of you actually telling me ever since this game launched how great of a time you've been having with it, and there have certainly been some people saying that, you know, they haven't enjoyed it, it's not their cup of tea, but the majority of people I'm seeing, at least on my channel, and even on a lot of others, you know, a lot of other reviewers, a lot of other just videos about Days Gone, I've seen so many people expressing that, like, this game is amazing and it's an awesome game. And does it have its flaws? Yeah. Is it perfect? No. Would I call it a masterpiece? No, I wouldn't necessarily call it a masterpiece, but I would call it, again, an amazing game, a great game, a solid game, a game that is worth your time if you're even remotely interested in it. I've seen a lot of people. I realized with Days Gone that review scores do affect a good chunk of people. There's a lot of people, when they see a negative review score, or they see a game that gets like a low Metacritic score, it does make them rethink or hesitate whether or not they want to buy that game and play it. And that's just so unfortunate, because I've seen so many people kind of like wondering or on the fence, like, I don't know, should I get Days Gone? It doesn't look like it's getting good reviews, and there's a lot of, you know, just... it's very polarizing, so a lot of people are very unsure, and that's just so unfortunate to me, because, like, I would immediately tell anybody who is showing any interest in this game, yes, go buy Days Gone, go play Days Gone. Is it a perfect game? No. Are there going to be moments where you get frustrated? Of course, but that's with any game. But believe me, the amount of content that's in here, the fact that I spent almost like 60, 80, maybe even close to 100 hours, I wasn't timing it exactly, but I know it was a long time, a lot of gameplay time. That's insane. Like, I was not expecting that. I thought I'd be putting 30, maybe 40 hours most into this game, and I'd have everything done and potentially have the platinum, but I was completely wrong. And I just enjoyed every moment of it, man. I mean, there were a few moments of frustration, but the amount of moments I experienced that were awesome, fun, you know, interesting, and just kind of had me on the hook when it comes to the story and the gameplay greatly outweigh any moments of frustration or any moments that maybe weren't as exciting as I was expecting. It greatly outweighs it. So yeah, this review turned out to be a lot longer than I expected, but I hope you guys appreciate how in depth I went, because there's just, again, I know there's things I'm forgetting about here, things I'm not talking about, because there's just so much. And honestly, I'm probably going to talk more about Days Gone going forward, about maybe a potential sequel, or if we get any more information on it. You guys know I've been updating you with sales and how well it's been doing, and I'm glad, because this game was awesome, man. Like, this was an amazing game, and I just I'm glad. I kind of knew, like, from a while ago, like, I just knew the second I saw this game, like, this is going to be a good game. Like, I could just tell it's going to be a good game. May not necessarily end up being a masterpiece, but Bend is on to something here, and I'm just glad I supported it. I'm glad I gave this game my time, because it was certainly worth it. But I'm going to end the video here, because if not, I'm going to continue to just ramble and ramble. But at this point, I'm going to ask you to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think about Days Gone and your time with it? Did you platinum it? Did you beat the game? Did you get the secret ending? Just let me know your thoughts. Did you not enjoy it? What aspects of the game, you know, were kind of negatives to you? What would you like to see in a sequel? Just let me know any and all of your thoughts down below. Be sure to leave this video a like if you did enjoy it. It lets me know you guys enjoy these review videos and encourages me to keep them going. Also, let me know if you'd be interested in me reviewing other games, maybe like third-party games going forward. I've been putting a heavy emphasis on Sony's first-party games, but you let me know if that's something you'd be interested in as well. Again, like the video, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys,